All right, guys, I've had a grande Starbucks coffee, so I'm gonna try to keep it talking slow, but bear with me. So if you don't know, I did live in Asia for 6 months last year, so I've got quite the bucket full of stories to tell. But this one was one of my favorites, because before I left, of course, I received a lot of, is this loud enough? Before I left, I received a lot of travel advice. You know, pack extra underwear on your carry-on, you know, all your valuables in your carry-on, and you know, don't do anything too dangerous at night. But honestly, the most impactful advice that I got was advice that I received 20 years prior that was, don't talk to strangers. Don't take food or beverages from people you don't know. And don't get into vehicles with people you just met. Well, Mom, I didn't exactly follow those rules. Living abroad alone kind of has a different twist to it. So of course it all started one day when I was arriving in Malaysia. I, of course, arrived in Malaysia and went, I'm going to find a beach, because if I'm going to Malaysia, I may as well enjoy the sunshine. So I packed up my go bag, and of course, it was such a spontaneous notion of finding a beach that I didn't have a bathing suit or flip-flops. So I found myself sitting on the sands of Batu Ferringhi in Penang with those large blue harem pants, a camisole tank top, and Converse. But I didn't care. It was so beautiful, I didn't mind that the sand was chunking itself in between my toes in the dampness of my socks. And as I was sitting there enjoying the nice breeze and the jet skis going by in the distance and the kids screaming and running into the waves, I noticed a parasail coming across the horizon. And I thought, well, that looks like a lot of fun. It looks like a tourist trap, but it looks like a lot of fun. And so I meandered over to the beach where the sandwich board was displaying pricing for parasails and jet skis and water skiing. It was an outrageous price, let me tell you. But I'd lived in Asia long enough to know I can get this down. So I haggled with the guys a little bit, and they gave me what I thought was a fair price. And so there I go, they lift me up into the air, and I'm looking down on the sparkling blue waters of Malaysia and onto the deep green of the forests surrounding the area. And attached to me, because they wouldn't let me go alone, was my trusted guide, Zaman. Now, Zaman was a friendly, quiet, and reserved local. He worked for the water sports company and the beachside bar right nearby. And as we flew through the air and I clutched to my GoPro because I would not do anything except capture this, obviously, I kind of babbled into the wind about how much I loved Malaysia and how beautiful I thought it was, and he just kind of smiled and nodded, and so we finally land. It wasn't pretty, but we landed. Because parasails, you know, you have to just land running. It's very tricky. And we ended up sitting out by the beachside bar, just chatting and drinking some water and hanging out, and I asked him a little bit more about his life in Malaysia, and he seemed taken by me for some reason. And I'm not sure if it's because people don't normally sit and have a conversation with him after a parasailing trip, or if there was something that I was saying that caught his attention. But he asked me, he said, "Have you been to Monkey Beach?" And I said, "No, I've heard about it, but I haven't been. I just arrived today. I don't really know what I'm doing yet." He said, "Would you like to go hiking with me?" And I said, "Oh, okay, to Monkey Beach?" And he said, "Yeah, I used to go hiking all the time, but I don't go very much because my friends don't really like to." And all of this was, of course, in broken English. And so I thought, well, don't talk to strangers. Don't take food or beverage from strangers. Don't get into a car with a stranger. Well, how are we gonna get there? Well, I'll take you to the national park and we'll go hiking. It's like, can I bring a friend? I don't actually have a friend, but at least if he believes I have a friend, maybe they think they're, you know, large and protective. He said, "Yeah, they come too. I said, "Okay, all right." I went home that night to my hostel thinking, oh my God, I've just asked for a death wish. This is everything that my parents told me not to do, and I've just agreed to go hiking into a remote jungle with a man I just met who can hardly communicate with me. I thought, do I call in sick? Do I go get some food poisoning? Like, what's the deal here? But I ended up going. So I met him on the beach the next morning because something in my gut told me this is an adventure you've got to take. I showed up on the beach thinking, okay, we'll just get in his car. He'll take me straight to the national park. I looked at it on a map. It's a straight shot from here, from the beach to the national park, and then we'll hike up there on controlled paths. We'll come back down. He'll drive me back. I'll go back to my hostel. Well, he shows up on a motorbike with an extra helmet. At least safety first, guys. And I think, okay, this is really already not starting well. My mom's gonna throw a fit. But I said, it's all right. So I got on the back of the motorbike and I cling to him like no other. And he starts off towards the national park. And we start whizzing by the little shops and the night market stands that are starting to prepare. And I'm like, all right, this is fine. Straight shot, I know right on the pathway, I trust myself, this is good. And then he turns left. And I think, this is where I die. I'm never gonna return from this. I should have told my mom what I was doing. And just as though he was reading my thoughts, he yelled back into the wind, I want to take you to a waterfall first. Okay, cool. And so he's weaving in and out along the coastlines and then in through the jungle, and I can feel the humidity rising and sticking to my skin as we get into the jungle. And he pulls over and he parks the bike, and we start hiking up this waterfall. And it was stunning. There was no one there. It was off the side of a road that hardly anyone would have noticed without a personal tour guide. And we climbed up these rocks, and at the top there was this beautiful swimming pool, bright blue, and its own little waterfall. And we just sat there together in silence. And I thought, what is this guy's motivation? I didn't ask for this, I'm not paying him for this, but here he is taking me into these beautiful remote spots. I thought, there's gotta be something up his sleeve, right? There's gotta be something more to this. So we get back to Fred down from the waterfall, and we start driving some more. And then he pulls over to a little cart on the side of the road where they are selling the stinkiest fruit in the world, durian. It doesn't taste as bad as it smells, but it smells like dirty feet. So he set one down in front of me, he bought me one, and he says, this is an experience you have to have before you go. I said, okay, cool, sure. This was your plan all along, right? To just trick me into eating the stinkiest fruit in the world, thanks. And so I break it open and I try it, and he's very pleased with himself that he's given me this experience to go home with. I kind of went, you can have the rest, it's okay. And so we start going back down the mountain. He's like, okay, we'll go to the park now. And I look out, and over to my left, we're up at one of the highest points in the mountain, and I can see the entire island and the beaches, and it's stunning. And then all of a sudden, without warning, he pulls off to the side of the road again. Okay, this is when I die, right? This is when he's gonna take me into the forest, and I'm never gonna come out. He gets off the bike, turns to me, and he says, your turn. I give him the same look that my mother would have given me if I had told her that I was going into the remote jungle with a man I had just met. I said, what? He said, you've driven one before, right? And I go, uh-huh. He says, well, you go. So after a while of trying to finagle how exactly this thing worked, I took off down the mountain, and he stood happily watching with my GoPro, filming the whole thing. And I went, this is insane. I don't know this guy. I just met him parasailing, and yet here I am riding off with his motorbike. I could be leaving him in the dust. And I circle back around. He climbs on the back, and he says, drive. So I drove through the coastlines of Malaysia like I owned the place. And I was just waiting for some director to yell cut because I was truly convinced that I was in the new Malaysian version of Eat, Pray, Love. And then we get to the national park, and we start hiking. And it was the hottest darn hike I have ever taken in my life. We are sweating and walking up all of these stairs. We get to Monkey Beach, and we drink a fresh coconut, and we look out over the water, and we just sit there, and we eat nasi goreng, fried rice, and we just enjoy the serenity of it. Not really saying much, but just enjoying it together. And then we start the hike to Muka Head Lighthouse. And that's when I really started to get to know Zaman. He started telling me about his love of documentaries and cooking. And he told me about how nice his life is, that he can kind of work when he wants to, and he just has a lot of good friends on the beach and likes to enjoy the outdoors. I thought, this guy's pretty cool. And I suddenly didn't feel so alone. And I thought about the fact that while I was on the back of that bike ready to throw myself off in a very dramatic fashion, I thought, we don't trust people like this anymore. Trust is so hard to come by these days. And yet in that moment, instead of doing what every sane adult would do, I stopped listening to my head and I started listening to my heart. And that's what took me to the very top of Muka Head Lighthouse, where I could look over and see the entire island of Penang. I looked out over the treetops and I watched as people parasailed where I had just been the day before. I watched the jet skis go by and the boats drift off into the horizon, and I was just sitting next to this local man with very broken English, thinking, how in the world did I trust him for all of this? And as if reading my mind, he said, you have to trust to be happy. You see, Zaman thought that, he strongly believed, that if you trust everyone, you risk heartbreak and disappointment. But if you trust no one, you guarantee yourself a life of loneliness. So take the risk, not the guarantee. And it was as though Rafiki was hitting me over the head with his staff going, see, Hakuna Matata, you shouldn't have worried so much. And I looked at Zaman and I said, thank you. I needed this. Now, I'm not saying you should trust every odd man who asks you to get on the back of a motorbike. But take a moment to listen to your gut, more than your head sometimes. Because we get so caught up in the world and the amount of distrust that's going on in society that we forget sometimes that our gut will know what's right. And in the words of Zaman before we climbed back down from the lighthouse, he said, good people will find good people. Guilty people, meaning bad people, will find bad people. Do good and you will receive good. Good people will find good people with their hearts and their minds. Thank you.